Hey everyone, it's Carissa at Sprinkled with Glitter. Thanks for joining me today. Today I thought it would be fun to take a look at some Copic hair coloring. Now I want to start out by saying that I am no expert when it comes to Copic coloring at all, but these are some tips and tricks that I found really work for me when I'm coloring hair with Copic markers. I'm going to be using the new My Favorite Thing Friendship Rocks stamp set. I thought this was so adorable. I love these girls and I love the sayings as well. And I'm also going to be using the coordinating dies and the In the Spotlight stencil for my project today. So I wanted to give you a look at the products I'm using before we jump into the card project itself. Now to start out, I have all of my stamps mounted on my Misty, and I'm inking these up with a Copic friendly black ink and stamping them onto some Nina Solar White 110-pound cardstock. I've kind of started gravitating towards the 110-pound cardstock with the Nina because when I die cut my elements, I find that they have a much sturdier appearance and they don't kind of bend and fold as much once they're stuck in the envelope. It's just a personal preference. If you have the 80-pound, please use it. You could always cut an extra plain white die cut and put it behind if you kind of want to make your 80-pound cardstock a little bit sturdier. So I've stamped all of these images twice, and now I'm going to start my Copic coloring. Now before we get to our hair, we're going to color the skin on these little gals here. I'm starting out with the E50 marker and I'm adding kind of just like a light wash over the entire skin areas. Then I'm coming in with my E00 and I'm adding in some shadows. And before I come in with my darkest marker, I'm going to add a little R20 to the cheeks for some blush. And then I'll bring in the E11 marker. This is my darkest marker, and you can see how it really increases the contrast in those shaded areas. Now I'm going to go back to the E00 and blend out that E11 so that I get a nice smooth transition, being careful not to blend away all of that contrast either. And then I'll finally finish it off by going back to my E50 and kind of blending everything together. Now, because my memory is not that great, I keep a binder with some of my favorite Copic colors in it, and I referred back to that to kind of pick some hair colors for today. For this first combination, I am starting out with the YR21, and I'm marking out my highlight areas. Then I'm going to come in with my darkest marker, which is my YR27, and I'm going to start flicking in from the roots and the ends. And I am not using a solid coloring motion. I'm going to just add in the darkest areas, and then I'm going to come in with my medium marker and flick further in towards that light area. Now, I am not using a solid coloring motion because hair has kind of that high and low. It has some texture to it. You can definitely use this with a, solid coloring motion, but I find that I like my hair more with a little bit of texture. Now, I'm coming back to my lightest marker and I'm flicking in the highlight areas once again, but I will say that by flicking, I am not covering the entire surface of the stamped images. If you look at my stamped and colored image very closely, you will see areas with a tiny bit of white left, and I think that kind of adds to that highlight area. So I'm going to show you this again. I've come in with my second set of markers here. For this color combination, I'm using E33, E35, and E57, and that E57 is going to really add contrast to this hair color combination here. It's going to add some really nice darks. Now, something I like to do also is I like to come back in after I've worked through my markers. So I start out with my light, I go to my dark and my medium, and I add a little bit of light once again. I like to go back to my darkest marker once again and really make those dark areas really nice and dark. That adds to the contrast and it kind of creates a bigger gap between my light color and my dark color. And it really accentuates those highlight areas because the dark gets a little bit darker, and I don't tend to go back in with the lightest marker and add more light because I want there to be a bigger gap between that light and dark. I just find that it increases the contrast and it really gives me a look that I really like. Now, I thought I would also explore some alternative hair colors as well. So since these girls are kind of rocker chicks, I thought I would try some different color combinations for hair. So I'm starting out with RV34. I'm using the RV17 and the RV19. Now I'm using the same technique here. I'm just using bright, bold colors instead. So this one tends to be, or it ends up being a more kind of purpley magenta-y color. I also colored one with an RV 21, 25, and 29. That was more of like a hot pink version of hair. And I colored one with some BG markers as well, which gave me that really cool kind of teal blue, almost mermaid-like hair. The three colors that I used for that were the BG32, the BG15, and the BG09. And that 09, once again, was a nice deep dark marker that gave me a lot of contrast. So like I mentioned before, I'm just going in. I like to mark out my highlight areas first. And I know that you're probably, for me, I struggled for years, like, what's the highlight area? And sometimes I feel like we overthink these things, right? I mean, first of all, number one, it's a card, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. So I've stopped worrying about where my shadows are so much. I've kind of put them in areas that feel natural to me, and then I've just kind of gone with it. And the more that I practice, the more that I find that I'm pleased with my final result. But I don't like to put the pressure on myself to feel like my coloring has to be perfect all the time. But as I find things that do work for me, I like to share them with other people. So that's kind of where my theory on Copic coloring lies. But for the highlight, I normally just find the part that I think would be sticking out the most. So there's a bend on her head here, and that curve around her head is where kind of the highlight would be. Like I said, nothing with my shading and my shadowing is perfect, but I found these little tricks that work for me, and that's what I like to stick with. So once all my little gals are colored here, I'm going to use the coordinating dies to die cut these with my Gemini Junior. You can use any die cut machine that you have. I do like to use a little bit of that delicate surface painter's tape to hold my dies in place as I run them through my die cut machine. And you can see all of my adorable little girls here that are ready to go on some cards. Now I'm going to use the three girls with the super colorful hair, and I'm going to make a trio of cards. And I'm going to start out by heat embossing my sentiments. So I've prepped the surface of this black cardstock using a powder tool. And now I'm stamping a couple of different sentiments on either end of this black cardstock using some Versamark ink, not VersaFine, Versamark. And I'm sprinkling on some white embossing powder. And once my heat tool is good and hot, I'll take my heat tool over and heat set these until they're smooth and melted. Then I'm going to take these over to my paper trimmer, and I'm going to trim them into little strips. Now I am using this You're a Superstar, You're a Hit, and Our Friendship Rocks. Those are the sentiments I'm using on my cards today. Over on the My Favorite Things YouTube channel, I am making another card featuring this stamp set as well. And I used the sentiment that says, I'm so glad we're in sync, because let me just tell you, big in sync fan here. I was a big Lance Bass fan back in the day. Everybody else was into Justin Timberlake back then, but I was into Lance Bass. And now I really think Justin Timberlake is super handsome, and is it me, or does he just get better looking with age? But anyway, I digress. Big NSYNC fan, still play the NSYNC Christmas album every year at Christmas. But if you want to see that project, go on over to the My Favorite Things YouTube channel. Now for these cards, I am creating a 4-bar size card, which measures 3.5 by 4 7/8. So it's a little bit smaller than an A2 size card. And all of these are going to be this kind of what I consider a mini sized card. It's a standard card in other countries, but here in the US, it is a little bit smaller than our standard A2 size card. So for the background on these cards, I'm using the Star Celebration stencil from My Favorite Things, and I'm blending on some Distress Oxide ink in some rainbow colors here. And you can see I'm keeping it kind of confined. I don't want to blend over the entire card front. I just kind of want a sprinkling of stars coming from kind of from that upper right area to the lower left area. So I'm just kind of blending on in small little areas. And once I have my color blended off, I can remove the stencil. And I always think it is so much fun to see the results. And I'm going to do this on all 3 of the card fronts. So you can see there's my rainbow stars there. And in order to finish off these cards, I'm going to keep this really simple. I'm going to let my girls be the star of the show. They're each going to have their own little stage. I colored their dresses so that they would all have like a little black dress on. I thought that would be a lot of fun. And I gave them some gold accents with a Tonic Nuvo Midas Touch glitter pen. So all of these pieces are going onto this card front using some foam adhesive. I have my stage in place, my sentiment in place, and then my little girl over the top. And then I'm going to slide a piece of this black and white striped paper. This is actually a paper that I made from the bold diagonal stripes background stamp from My Favorite Things. I'm just going to slide that behind my little girl there to add a little pop of pattern. And I'm going to add a black and white twine bow to the top of each of these cards, just for a little something fun there. And then to add a little bit of shine, kind of just some shiny accents, I thought I would give my sparkling clear sequins a rest. I know, shocker. But I'm going to use some of these rhinestones from HAI or High Supply. I'm not sure exactly which one it is. It's one or the other. And I'll finish off the microphones. They have a layer of that Midas Touch glitter pen as well, but I'm going to add a layer of glossy accents over the bows and the microphones as well, just to give them a little bit more shine. And that completes my super simple trio of cards today, featuring the brand new Friendship Rocks stamp set from My Favorite Things. I love these little girls. I think they are so adorable. I really hope that some of these tips and tricks that I find useful when coloring hair with Copic markers that you'll find useful too. And I hope I've inspired you to try some different color combinations for hair as well, especially when you're coloring mermaids or little rocker girls like this. As always, I will have links to the featured supplies in the description at YouTube, but head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. Thanks for stopping by today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are one of my favorites. If you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, go ahead and click that button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.